Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM, Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Tonight, we take a look at co-parenting. Whether you are newly separated or have been navigating shared parenting for years, doing it right can mean the difference between emotional growth or lasting trauma for your children. So, how do you put the kids first, communicate with purpose, and build a healthy co parent dynamic that works for everyone? We have the experts in the house to provide some practical advice and tips. My guests are Dr. Ashley Elliott, mental health and wellness expert, and Carol Muleta, parenting consultant and speaker. Thank you both for joining this conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So let me share just a couple of fast facts. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, more than one quarter of all children under the age of 21 have a parent living outside of their household. That's nearly 22 million children growing up in divided families. And about 70 to 80% of custodial parents are mothers, but the share of fathers with custody is increasing. So I want to begin by throwing out some definitions here. What is co-parenting and how might it differ from simply sharing custody? And I'll ask you about that first, Dr. Elliott.
Okay, so thank you.
Sure.
Co-parenting, I would say, is cooperative or collaborative parenting. That means that you come together with the shared interest, the shared intention to help the child strive and have the healthiest upbringing as possible. When you're collaboratively parenting or cooperatively parenting, that means you're passing information back and forth, you're sharing decision making. One person isn't making all the decisions, you're sharing the load when it comes to financial needs, when it comes to medical needs, and most of all, you're communicating actively with each other about the child's needs. And usually you should have the child centered at most of those conversations, and when they're old enough, having the child collaboratively work with you as a part of the team. And that's how we ideally would like collaborative parenting or co-parenting to go.
Now, I know shared parenting, Carol, is often considered a legal term, but I'm not talking about the legal issues here. I'm talking just specifically about how the relationship of shared parenting compared with co-parenting is it two sides of the same coin, or do you think shared parenting is exponentially different from co-parenting?
I feel like co-parenting definitely emphasizes what Dr. Ashley said, and that is the conscious decision that you're going to work together. Because you can have some arrangements where the mother or the father gets custodial rights and the other parent pays child support, but is not actively interested in what goes on day to day, like bedtime, extracurricular activities, custodial parent, you decide all that. I'm just doing my part, maybe because for legal reasons or just a moral, a moral justification, but they really leave the heavy lifting on the custodial parenting. So I don't know, shared parenting could fall into that category where the person is pretty much hands off and lets the other person do the work. Co-parenting really, in its truest sense, emphasizes collaboration and saying that I want to be active even if I'm not the custodial parent.
So let's talk about parallel parenting, Dr. Elliott. How does that compare to co-parenting? And specifically for those who are not familiar with it, what is parallel parenting?
So parallel parenting is a co-parenting approach, but usually you see it in divorced or separated parents when either there's a high degree of ongoing conflict or the communication skills are not where we want them to be. So they have very difficult times communicating with each other. So parallel parenting means we're just doing our part, doing my thing, and you're doing your thing, so that we can raise this child with as minimal interaction between the parents as possible. So there are things in parallel parenting, whereas a co-parent or shared parent, you might have to meet up somewhere. A parallel parent may use the phone, and they may use texting or an app. They really focus on strong boundaries, like, I have to be there at this time. So if you're not there, we will leave, and it's mostly really goal-oriented, focusing on the child, because again, these people either don't see eye to eye, or their communication skills when it comes to each other, it's difficult. And when we see parallel parenting, we also have like a neutral drop off or exchange point. So, and it's not uncommon for it to be a public place, like a park, a police station, a third party that we're mutually connected to's house. The parallel is because we have these differences, but we are actively interested in parenting the child, which is different than what Carol was talking about when we talk about shared parenting, from the aspect of one not really having the interest or not wanting to be engaged. We want to, we just don't get along with each other, or we don't have that rapport with each other.
So let's drill down. Go ahead, Carol.
Well, I was going to
ask you. Go ahead.
It just occurs to me, sort of in that parallel parenting, you're asking your child to basically code switch too.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to use code switch, but I was like, this is not helping the child at all.
No, because they know when I'm over at when I'm at mom's, I get to do this, and when I'm at dad's, I get to do that. They probably act differently as well, and that can just really give a child whiplash. It's unnecessary.
It's whiplash, and also, as a person who I co-parent with my ex-husband, but I parallel parent with my youngest daughter's dad, and that's because of the personality types and things that have transpired. So it actively takes me a couple of at least 24 to 48 hours to reintroduce her and reacclimate her to the place where we have rules, and this is how this works, and this is this, because over dad's house, everything flies. But here we have schedules, and we have things to keep abreast of. So it does, and it's not something that you want to have happen long term, but unfortunately you do. But I find that when you have more of a structured schedule and structured parenting plans, it works better, and it reduces the whiplash, and it reduces the time. So if you say a kid for like parallel parenting, they go to one parent's house, and let's say things are a little bit more lax, you will see that it probably takes about a week for that kid to reacclimate to, as far as behavior and temperament, to back to where they are at the primary caregiver's home.
Dr. Elliott, that sounds like a new reality TV show right there.
Now, some days it's rough for us over here, but we do what we can to make sure. And I think the thing that keeps it from being toxic and that whiplash, what I interject into my parallel parenting, is allowing my child to tell me when things don't feel good for them. Now she's 5, or when things are confusing, or if there's an overall, or we talk about overall rules that we keep for both households. Yeah. So things will change, because he has a mixed household with one child of his own and another child. So there's a lot of differences that happen between me and her older sister and I in this household. So communication, even though it may not have been the best in a parallel, it is key that if you're not communicating as well as you want to with the other parent, that you're communicating as well as you can with your child.
Now I'm tired. But
you're tired.
Come do this for me, Harold.
I did it with one lovely child, and listen, I can only say, after listening, prayers for you and the best, as all jokes aside,
Mm-hmm.
And let me just say this. Yes, it is a very complex situation that you have been willing to share with us. But I think the reality is, Carol, I'm sure that Dr. Elliott's situation is not rare.
No, not at all. I've definitely worked with parents that are in that situation where dad or mom has
Hmm.
different rules and things like that. And I said, listen, you've got to, when you're talking with your child, gently bringing them back to what you all do there. It's almost like an ask for me in my house. This is what we're going to do. And especially if it's a situation where let's just say mom is a custodial parent and it's more organized and more routines and more orderly, and it feels like a drag to the child. I just urge the custodial parent to stick with it, because they have a vision for their child. They know what they're trying to get to, and in the long run, your child will appreciate it. They're even within the same house, within a marriage, when you have two people raising the children, your children have a slightly different relationship with each parent.
Mhm.
But as long as you agree on the end goal and the boundaries, it's kind of okay. You can't allow a little room for your co-parents' different personality or whatever, as long as they understand that the child still should be in bed at 8 o'clock, not 11, because
Yeah,
we're trying to be consistent.
absolutely. Carol, from your perspective, new co-parents, what are the major mistakes that they make right at the beginning of the process once they've, if they were married, once they've separated?
I think right in the beginning, they might not realize the importance of um, being collaborative, and you might even have one parent that, particularly the parent that's not custodial, just not even worry about setting up any rules, because they want, in the beginning, they're so worried about their child still loving them, still thinking they're a good person and all of that. So they're more into that, making sure their child's comfortable and can be able to say, I had a good time with mom, or I had a good time with dad, or the other spouse or partner. But they want their time to just be stress-free for the child and enjoyable, instead
Hmm.
of really recognizing you're still raising the child.
Right.
This is a child that still will need some boundaries, need a framework, need discipline. It's not going to be fun all the time, and it's tempting, especially those parents. I don't know how they do it, that split the week in half, right? And so
Yes.
they want their time to be, as comfortable and enjoyable as possible before they have to turn the child over to the other parent. And the child still needs to be raised. They still need certain life skills. It's not fun and games when they come to your house. And so I think in the beginning, they're hesitant to set up that framework that will really save them in the end, if they would go ahead and do the work up front and risk not being the cool parent for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Dr. Elliott, I want you to answer the same question, but we will do that after the break. I want to remind our listeners that you can hear this and every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation about co-parenting, do's, don'ts, and even wills and won'ts. My guests are Dr. Ashley Elliott, mental health and wellness expert, and Carol Muleta, parenting consultant and speaker. So, Dr. Elliott, before the break, I was asking about some of the mistakes that new co-parents may make. And Carol shared some really good ones. Do you have any other thoughts about that?
Yes, I do. I see a lot of therapy clients who may be going through divorce or separation or some type of transition. And when it comes to, thinking about physical custody or how weeks or things go, I always say the mistake is being made is not setting goals for that child that are developmentally appropriate while the transition is happening. So, what do you both want for the child academically, developmentally, environmentally? Because we sometimes they get focused so much on you're doing this and you don't know, I don't want them to do this and I don't want them there. But if you really have the conversation about goals, you can see that you have more things in common than you have to disagree with. So that will also save them a lot of time, and I wouldn't see them as much. So I don't think that would be good for me, but it'd be great for them to sit and you set goals, and also to think about what your goal is as a parent. Like Carol was talking about, sometimes when you're the parent that doesn't have physical custody, that idea of being the joy, the adventure, the fun parent. But what is your goal in parenting? What type of parent do you want your child to see you as? Not just now, but forevermore. And I think most people get caught up in thinking about maybe the trauma that could occur when parents separate or things look different. So they focus on doing everything possible to look shiny, to look good, to look perfect. And I tell my parents all the time, there's no such thing as perfection. One, perfection is subjective. It depends on whose idea of perfect we're talking about. And then secondly, children change just like adults change. So their needs right now and their needs 5 to 10 years out will be different. So it's so important to think of what your intentions are and what you want to be rooted in as a parent. For instance, we're talking about the difference between being a safe haven and being an escape. I don't want my children to see my house as an escape. I want them to see it as a safe haven. An escape is I am trying to run from, hide from, get away from these things that may be negative, traumatizing, or may have to do with penalty or punishment or rules. That's just not realistic. The world is going to put those things into play. But I do want my kids to see my house as a safe haven where we can actively have a conversation about things that scare them, bother them, piss them off, they're confused about, and respectfully, we can handle that. So the shift from being carefree to being careful means seeing yourself as a safe haven, seeing yourself as I'm a blend of some parenting styles. I'm authoritative, but I meaning that I tell you these are the things that need to be done. But I also know how to allow my child or my children to come into the room and voice their opinions about how a rule makes them feel or how something makes them feel. And we can talk about it and we can still have fun and joke around. But when I'm not joking and we need
the what we're not going to do. So Carol, now here's another really difficult one and so common. And I think this goes back to the parallel parenting. And let me provide some context, because one of the things that Dr. Elliott was talking about earlier about parallel parenting, if you have to exchange or have a drop-off point that is at like a police station, obviously that is because there's been a history of domestic violence, blah, blah, blah. We understand that. Or if a friend has to be there to make sure that one parent or the other or both don't act a fool, then obviously that is problematic, as opposed to the other issue about emotional maturity, Carol, where she or he is saying something about the other parent negatively about in front of the child. I know this is about the child, But this is all about the relationship or that or lack thereof between the co-parents. How
Mhm.
can you get, what do they say? If you were in your feelings about what he did and when he did it, and, or what she did and when, how do you compartmentalize that for the good of the child?
Wow, that can definitely be a tough one, and especially if you're the parent that's being talked about, it can be hard to hold your standard that you're not going to do that. And that's something that I absolutely applaud my mother for doing. My parents divorced when I was 11 years old,
Mm,
and she didn't. She made sure that we prepared for our visitation. Even if it was a thing where we wanted to be playing or doing something else, she said, nope, this is your day. You're supposed to be going over there. And she didn't say anything negative. And honestly, after I became an adult and understood more, I'm like, wow, that was really cool, Mom.
that was a lot.
That you were able to do that. And it's not that he didn't talk negatively about her so much, but it's just she could have said a whole lot more, and she
Mhm.
didn't. And so I definitely think that parents ought to hold firm to that. That is so hard. And then also speaking with your child. I mean, it's unfortunate that you're going to have to deal with that when the child comes home and says, he said you are this and that. And you'll have to
Mm,
talk about, you know me, and our relationship, the time that we spend together. Let's just focus on how you experience me and who you know me to be. And now if it is particularly disruptive, then you might need a mediator to come in and help with that. And I mean, I've actually frankly heard of people going to court about something like that, especially in extreme cases. But if it's not that, but it's just something negative you have to deal with, that's what I would do. Continue to show up to your child the way you want them to remember you, the way you want them to respect you. And you can say, well, that's what he says, that's what goes on in his house or her house. um, let's focus on what we're doing here.
yeah, because Dr. Elliott, you don't know all that may be being said about you. He may be saying 1 through 5 about the mother of the child,
Mhm.
but the child only says that mommy, or the daddy only said 1 and 2,
Mhm.
but didn't tell you about 3, 4, and 5. And
Mhm.
so you don't know, and you don't know how it was said. And to Carol's point, Dr. Elliott, what is an age appropriate way to say, you know me, you know how I show up? Because you can't say that to a 5-year-old.
Mm.
You may be able to say it to a 16 or 17-year-old. I'm
Mhm.
not saying that Carol's wrong. What I'm saying is there's got to be a way to say that every time that I see you, you know that I love you.
Mhm.
You know that we are doing things for your, I'm a good dad, or I'm a good mom. But you can't, you can't say, I show up for you every time, like I said, to a
Mhm.
4 or 5 or 6-year-old. How do you do that?
That's a great question. You start by asking them what the idea of a good mom or a dad or a mom means to them. And that's something I have done with my child at the 4 or 5 age. So one day I just sat with her out the blue and I said, what do you think of mommy? And she was like, oh, she's like, oh, she'll buy me a lot of stuff. I said, okay. But she's
Candy.
like, right. But I was like, "You buy
Snickers.
a lot of stuff?" Yeah, baby, before the boycott, we was up in Target a lot. But one of the things that I say adults, we forget how insightful and observant kids are. She also said, and then when I'm sad, you know how to make me happy. when I get upset or when I get frustrated, which is a thing, it's developmentally appropriate. She's learning new stuff in school. When she gets frustrated, that she doesn't click right away and it takes a little bit of time. She's like, you always remind me to breathe. All of these things. So I said, well, what do you think these things? She said, these are good things. You're a good mommy. I didn't put those words into her mouth. And then I asked her, what do you think about that? And she had positive things to say. And I affirmed those things. See, the thing about it is the relationship that we have with the other person, that's not the relationship that the child is involved in. They are involved in the parental relationship, not the prior romantic relationship, platonic relationship, whatever it may be. So it's important to what type of things do they do? Well, he always gets me a McDonald's, or we go to IHOP for pancakes. Oh, okay, so he knows some of your favorite things to eat, and how does that make you feel? You know, oh, he likes to play. Oh, so you have such a good time over there. Sometimes you don't even want to leave, huh? No, all of those things, affirming safety, being interested in what the child is interested in, having conversations about how many of those things occur, and also having a conversation, which I do with both of my children, they're 12 and 5, is what could I do better? Or how did this upset you? Or tell me about something that I did that may have made you mad or upset you over the last couple of days or whatever. And being able to talk about it and talk about it from the perspective of, well, this is what I thought I was doing as the adult, but this is what you felt as the child. And there's never not a a chronological age where this is not developmentally appropriate to go, what could I have done better? What would you like me to do? What do you want to do next time? And this puts the focus back on the kid instead of not tit for tat tallying. Well, he does this and I do that, and he does this and I do that. It's all focused on them, and it gives them the chance to speak openly without, sometimes what we think when we fear that someone's speaking bad about us, they're putting stuff into their head or they're rehearsing things. So just ask them and ask why, and have conversations about, where do we go? Do you want these things to be maintained, or you want these things to change? You'll be surprised what kind of feedback you get, even from a 4 or 5-year-old.
And can I say something, if it's okay? Something that I loved about what you said, and I talk about it with parents too, and that was where you asked about things about the other parent, and some of them were positive. It gives the child permission, because this is something else that they struggle with liking, enjoying being with the other parent.
Absolutely.
Like, so they understand that it is okay that I still love mommy and I still love being with her. And it's okay that when I go over there, I can feel free. I can enjoy myself over there, and you're not going to feel bad about it or sad about it. I think that really gives them agency over their emotions.
Absolutely. One thing that I will always remember to do when I'm doing drop off with my daughter is to wish her a good time. I'm like, have a great time. I can't wait to hear about it. Or text me and let me know if you did something. Send me a picture. And we both do that. We'll send pictures of what she's doing. He'll send me pictures. And it's the thing to know. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I saw you you saw me do that? Yes. It looks like you're having a great time. We never want to demonize the other party. Despite what we went through as adults, this child still has the rest of their life to interpret their relationship with them based on their own autonomy and based on the behaviors that they see that parent display when it comes to them.
So, Dr. Elliott, how do you know that a child is being negatively impacted by poor parenting? I'm not talking about obvious stuff, like if the other parent is getting high, or if the other parent is a raging alcoholic, or if the other parent has unsecured firearms in the house. I'm talking about something that may not necessarily present itself immediately.
So usually when I see that with therapy clients or children that I work with in the community, the one thing I tell parents to look out for when you're speaking of the exchange or that time with the other parent is the level of anxiety or hesitance. But when the kid's going like, oh, it's that weekend again? Do I have one thing that's near our house or something else that I'm interested in. It's a consistent, is there another way for me to avoid going to this? Or a marked change in mood when you're discussing what goes on. If you ask what's going on and they give you nothing. Kids want to tell you a lot about what they've done. If your kid comes home on a regular basis and there's nothing to tell about whatever that parent is doing it there, it either means they're extremely bored, which could be an issue, because that means there's lack of engagement and they're not doing the things that you would want them to do to keep them engaged, happy, academically, recreationally, whatever. Or they don't know what to make of it or don't know how to bring it to you that something is going on, and they may not, like, it may be something like there a lack of interest, or they forget to feed them at a certain time, or they're not paying attention to their likes, or I've had a kid that a parent insisted that the child didn't have an allergy, it wasn't real. And was giving them food that the other parent was like, they cannot have this, and thought it was just they don't want you. And they're like, well, I don't want to go over there because they keep telling me this. So I'll try to find as many reasons. I need to finish my homework. I need to work on this because I don't feel like getting in the middle because I'm not being heard. Pay attention to a kid being talkative the same way you pay attention to a kid being silent or reserved. It has a lot there's a lot of hiding. I have my own kids with interactions with other family members, but like, I didn't want you to be mad, so I didn't say anything. Or another one, when you have a single parenting aspect of, or a single caregiver aspect of it, is I know that you don't have the child care for me. So I don't want to mess this up. And this really happens for kids about the age about 7 to 11, that kind of range, where they're just like, oh, it was okay, or having nothing to say, because they know that mommy got it or daddy has to go to work. They have to go out of town. They may want to do something for themselves. And if I say that these things are going on, like you said, they're not necessarily glaring red flags, but there will be enough for mom or dad to want a conversation.
Carol?
Well, the other thing I would say, assuming that you and the other parent are able to talk about some things like what you're doing over at your house, and something fun that your child likes, or, just in conversation. Like, you're not saying, I think over at your house you need to do XYZ, but talk about your child. And like, I didn't realize, the other day, I didn't realize how much she likes drawing. So I went out and got some colored markers, or I got some paints, and she's really into it. So share information about your child, about what's working over at your house. Like, don't gatekeep, because really your child is the priority. So you want your child to have an enjoyable time. You want them to grow. You want them to learn in both households. So drop some hints like that. Like, for example, when Dr. Ashley talked about maybe they're bored or not enough engagement, talk about some things that you're doing that you notice have been fun, or something you're going to get ready to try. And maybe that'll spark up something in them and say, well, maybe I should start doing that. Maybe we should start doing that over here too. So
how do you prevent children from pitting one parent against the other for their own rewards? Asking, mom said, I can't have the new, Barbie doll with the afro and the big earrings. but I asked dad, and he goes right out and gets it, because she knows that one is going to, if one doesn't, the other will. How do you prevent that, Carol?
Well, again, assuming that you are on civil terms with the spouse or partner, you can talk about that. That, hey, she asked me about doing some activity, maybe sleepovers. I'll pick that. That's a hot button issue for some people.
Yeah.
So she asked me about going over for a sleepover. You can say, I have not allowed her to do that. And here's why. Like, maybe, I don't know if there's something you know about the household or just something in general. You just feel uncomfortable with your child going over until maybe they're older or whatever. So share that. And assuming that, you know, the person is, you get along well, see if they can respect that. And then you can also even say, can you back me up on this? I mean, this is something that really, I'm really concerned about. Again, so you're not necessarily telling them, you know, this is what you have to do, but like, I'd like it if you could back me up on this. And then for other things, like now you are talking about that sometimes you can't prevent them from doing what they want to do, because as much as you say, let's be on the same page, let's do things the exact same way, it's good. There are going to be moments they slip in where they want to be the cool parent. And I want to get her that Barbie doll or whatever, whatever it is. And so sometimes you have to talk to the child like, wow, I'm surprised you got that, because remember we had kind of talked about that or whatever. And then maybe you're not going to, over here, we're just not going to do that, especially if it's something that's not life or death. You see what I'm saying? But here, this is what we do here. I can't control that. I can't, to
that particular point, I just remember something that happened when I was a child. My parents were still married when this happened. And we were in a store, and I asked my mother, because she and my father were in different parts of the store, because that's what they did. You go in the store, he goes to one part of the store, and I go, and my mother would go to another one. I happened to be with my mother, and I said, Mom, I really want this model ship, plastic glue ship or whatever. And she said no. And I said, okay. And then I went to my father and I asked him, and he said yes, and went and bought it. Now, keep in mind, they're married. And what happened was, when my mother saw it, she said to my father, I told him no. And the conversation was, if your mother says no, that means I say no.
Absolutely.
Or if your mother says yes, that means I say yes. And certainly, that was a very absolute and very simple thing, as opposed to, well, your mama doesn't want you to play football and your dad wants you to play football. That's a whole different and it's still applicable.
Been there.
But again, I remember, Dr. Elliott, I remember very well as a child. I think I was about 12. I remember feeling really bad about that, because I could see that it wasn't intentional. It was just, she said, somebody's got to tell me yes. Somebody's got to help a brother out, because I really want this model,
Getting this today,
Right. That's exactly how
It's developmentally appropriate, though. All kids try it. If it's not with your daddy and your mama, it's with your mama and your grandmother. How many times have you ever told you no, and you go to grandma and grandma look at you like, who told you no? And you get it.
Baby.
I got you. Don't worry about her. She just did. And they'll turn right around and bless your parents out about whatever they didn't get their baby. We learn how to negotiate at a very young age. But when it comes to parenting, whether you're married or when you're co-parenting, something that Carol was saying was very important. Like, my oldest is 12, and her dad and I we were married and we divorced. We separated. We co-parent. She does that all the time. She's a tween, so she's at the age where she just wants stuff, and she thinks it just magically manifests. If I say no, her dad will go, "Oh, what did your mom say?" And it's not. And one day she's like, well, right,
Gotcha.
Or she'll go, well, I'll just ask Dad. I say, you don't got to ask that. I already told him when you brought it up that it was something that we needed to discuss. And it's the gotcha. You would think steam that's coming out her ears. I foiled the plan. She just knew it, because daddies fold like origami every time. You look at your daughter, you just boom. So,
Yes.
but that showed her, I said, we communicate a
Mhm.
lot more than you think we do. So we always are talking about whether it's what your grades are, what new friends we like and we don't like, what you're into right now.
Mhm.
You know, all of those things. So don't think when it comes to something that you ask from us, we're not
Mhm.
communicating. We're a team. We are a
Right.
team, all of us. You are a team member. I'm a team member. Your dad's a team member. Anybody that's a part of our community, familial, or my friends that she calls aunties, we are a team. So best
Right.
believe we have a team huddle before we get ready to play this game, and we're knowing what's going on. And it's not to keep anything from anybody or that we're
Mhm.
conspiring. We need to know what's going on with you so we can make the best decision. And sometimes in the team huddle, they break me down. Girl, go ahead and give it the shoes. Just go ahead. She's doing this. It works in your favor. But we don't want the kid to start thinking that you can play back and forth, because what
Mhm.
happens is they become less of a child and more of a tertiary adult in this situation, trying to
Mhm.
manipulate. And that's when the things we were talking about earlier, like, oh, I heard you say bad things about this person,
Mhm.
and they kind of use them for
Mhm.
their own good to get what they want. Oh, you told me no, let me tell you what they said about you when I was over there. And
Right.
that works.
I only have 1 minute, and you touched on this, Dr. Elliott, but I want Carol to real briefly talk about this: the role that grandparents play in making or breaking good co-parenting. You get the final word there.
Okay. In general, absolutely talk to the parents about what they want, what the rules are before the children come over. What is it that you want them to be able to do? What is it that you would prefer that they not do? And at the same time, on the other side with the parents, give the grandparents a little room to show a little extra love. I mean, allow them to have something that they can do to treat the grandchildren, because again, that's a relationship they're building as well. So allow a little leeway for them, but on the big important stuff, follow what the parents want the children to do.
Yeah, always. I like I was just saying with Dr. Elliott. I remember when my parents were separated, and there was a whole lot of "I got you, baby" from from the grandparents. So yeah, that's a really really important relationship to foster with the grandparents of separated or divorced parents. So important. Dr. Ashley Elliott, Carol Muleta, thank you both so much. This was great. We could talk about this all day. But
Absolutely.
I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That is the Daily Drum for this Tuesday, May 27th. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.